Hello friends, thank you for watching this vlog, but don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because more than 70% of people who are watching these videos are not subscribed for this channel. It's very strange and it's very painful for our team, for our great team which are working on this video. And of course we will talk about the Ukraine, about situation inside of our country and around our country. Only real politics, only real information, any disinformation, any propaganda, only serious talk. Let's start. The United States has put forward a systematic set of very strong wishes to Ukraine regarding a number of reforms in exchange for continue to provide it with military and financial assistance. After the visit of the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, to the United States, Washington sent a letter to the Ukrainian leadership with a list of required reforms. The reforms referred to in the letter are related on the conditions of United States assistance, financial assistance, but some also to the requirements of the European Union as well as the International Monetary Fund. There are four main blocks of these demands from the United States. The first block is re-establishment of supervisory boards with the participation of foreigners at state-owned companies of Ukraine, the traditional feeding fields of the authorities, political government, and the oligarchs in Ukraine. The second is expanding the powers and independence of anti-corruption structures located in the zone of influence of our partners, National Anti-Corruption Bureau, Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor, and National Agency of Prevention of Corruption in Ukraine. The third one is reduction of powers of the SBU, of Special Investigation Service of Ukraine. No corruption and economical deals investigation they could lead in the future. Also, the lowering the power of Bureau of Economical Defense of Ukraine. The third one, the last one is to increase the tariffs and utility prices for Ukrainian customers. Most of the requirements are not new and are either already at a certain stage of implementation or are unlikely to be implemented. Moreover, Ukraine has accumulated vast experience in sabotaging Western reforms. In addition, presidential election will soon take place in the United States, and Biden administration is subject to attacks and criticism from the opposition regarding uncontrolled, very big financing of Ukraine. So Republicans regularly raise the issue that aid to Ukraine needs to be cut or stopped altogether. All this could negatively affect President Joe Biden ratings, especially considering that in American society support for Ukraine in terms of funding has begun to weaken. And the presence of public presentation of demands from the United States regarding reform to Ukrainian leadership, including those aimed at American society in order to demonstrate a responsible approach to the implementation of the Ukrainian case. In general, chickens were taken to the strength and control over the use of Western aid. The United States and Ukraine have agreed to jointly, under the control of the Pentagon, identify and prevent corruptional crimes related to the supply of American weapons to Ukraine. The corresponding memorandum was signed by representatives of the US Department of Defense and National Anti-Corruption Bureau. The main goal of this memorandum, which was signed these days by the director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, Krivonos, and the Pentagon Inspector General Robert Storch, provides for joint activities to identify and prevent corruption offenses affecting assistance from the United States. Robert Storch will monitor the flow of United States aid to Ukraine and cooperate with supervisory authorities in the US Agency for International Development and the US State Department. New British Defense Minister Grant Shapps, his French colleague Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu, as well as the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg arrived in Ukraine this week and had a meeting with the President of Ukraine. One of the main topics of the discussion between the sides is strengthening the Ukrainian air defense, as well as supplies of other equipment and its production jointly with Ukraine inside of Ukraine. The French Minister of Defense was accompanied by 20 representatives of defense industry enterprises that specialize in the production of armored vehicles, artillery, drones, and mine clearance. Chief of the British Defense Staff, Tony Radakin, arrived with the British Minister of Defense from the Commander-in-Chief Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, met. Also, during the dialogue between the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and President of Ukraine Vladimir Zelensky, it became known that NATO has entered into contracts more than 204 billion euros for the production of the 155mm shells, missiles, tanks, anti-tanks ammunition also. Most likely, these visits are part of the development of a new allied strategy for the further conducting of the war, a key element of which may be Ukrainians' transition to the strategic defense, not offensive operations. Economists and many mass media are writing about it. And in general, if we talk about the peace, today perhaps the best conditions for Ukraine to conclude it have been formed during the entire war, especially when we are comparing with the Minsk and Istanbul stages of negotiation in 2022. Although these conditions are far away from the ideal. The United States House of Representatives approved $300 billion aid to Ukraine. At first, Congress excluded this assistance to Ukraine from the Pentagon's draft budget and decided to implement it as a separate bill. Otherwise, they refused to accept the military budget at all. As a result, a separate bill of Ukraine on Ukraine received support of 311 votes and was adopted. 117 congressmen voted against it. The separation of Ukraine from the topic of Ukraine from the military budget, general military budget, according to Republicans, was necessary so that congressmen could discuss assistance to Ukraine in separate debates and once again highlight this issue. Thus, on the part of the Republicans, the issue of highlighted in order to start a new wave of political discussion regarding support or non-support for Ukraine during the American presidential election. For this purpose, it was moved from the budget to a separate line and separate list. It is becoming clearer. It is becoming clearer that it will be extremely difficult to increase American funding to Ukraine in the near future if it will be necessary, and any new trenches will now go through a special procedure for political discussion, which will complicate the allocation of these funds. It is worth nothing that during the year the amount of this fixation can be increased by making appropriate changes, or additional funds will be allocated under other budget items. Let us remind you that last year the United States defense budget allocated $800 million for assistance to Ukraine. This was significantly more than White House requested at the beginning, this time $300 million. And Ukraine, as a rule, regularly receives military assistance throughout the years as a part of other packages. The United States is the main donor of military assistance to Ukraine. Its volume has already exceeded $43 billion since the beginning of the war. Meanwhile, new personnel changes in the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine may indicate that the government teams is partially making concessions, finding a balance to Western partners, and a figure is being added to the number of deputy ministers who can rather be considered as a representative of the interest of international donors. So the Ukrainian government appointed 3 new deputy ministers of defense for Rustam Umerov, Yuri Gigir, Natalia Kalmykova, and Ekaterina Chernogorova. It is known that Yuri Gigir is a former deputy minister of finance in the government of Alexei Goncharuk, a free advisor of the cabinet of ministers in 2014-2018. For the last 3 years, he has been advising to the World Bank on the financial aspects of health-related reforms. In 2018-22, he worked in Ministry of Defense, or Ministry of Finance. Sorry, this person can be considered as a representative of the interest of Western partners in the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Natalia Kalmykova, Deputy for Social Development, since February 2022, she has been the Executive Director of the Ukrainian Veterans Fund. Before that, she was an advisor to the Commander of the Ground Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and Deputy Director of the Come Back Alive Foundation. This is a continuation of the theme of volunteering lending in the government. Ekaterina Chernogorenko, Deputy for Digital Development, previously worked at the Ministry of Digital Development and managed the Drone Army project in that ministry. It continues the office of the President influence of on the Ministry of Defense. The government also appointed Lyudmila Daragan as the State Secretary of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. This is Rustam Umerov's person on the post. At the Ukrainian front, offensive operations are continuing in the Melitopol and Bakhmut directions. There are oncoming battles. At the battles on the Strait moves, I can say it even. At the same time, the returns to the front of the Wagner's personnel under the leadership of one of the former commanders of the Wagner private military company, Troshev, and with the new name for Wagner's private military company, Redut, it will be a new name for ex-Wagners, may indicate this situation, a shortage of reserves in Russian army. In case the Ukrainian armed forces advance to Tokmak or Melitopol, the Russian Federation is trying to secure its supply lines and plans to build a new railway line. It should go from Crimea through the Zaporozhye Oblast and Donetsk region to the Rostov region. The Russians plan to launch it along the shores of the Azov Sea. That is at the maximum distance from the position of the Ukrainian armed forces. Now the land route and railway route from Crimea to the Russian Federation passed through the city of Melitopol, village Rozovka, and it is close to the front line now. If it is possible to build another road along the seashore, it will be about 40 kilometers farther south and from the battlefield. The threat of nuclear escalation is growing. The Russian Federation has renewed statements about the possibility of using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. not only Ukraine, but also on Europe and also on United States. Deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, Medvedev, again threatened NATO with a direct conflict on the ground. We are ready, although the results will be achieved at much greater cost to humanity than in 1945, Medvedev writes, likely hinting at Russia's use of nuclear weapons. Also, very well-known Russian political scientist Sergei Karaganov said that the only way to stop further military escalation in Ukraine and the world is threat from the Russian Federation to use nuclear weapons against Western countries. There are also concerns among Ukraine's allies that the course of the war could lead to a significant further escalation either within Ukraine or to a potential expansion of the conflict involving other players. In particular, the United States President Biden admits that the Russian Federation may use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. In general, the West believes that the impetus for nuclear escalation could be a sharp deterioration in Russia's position on the battlefield or a sharp deterioration in internal stability in Russia in general. Also, this week, Russia started an exercise training for the peaceful population to how to hide, how to use the shells, how to use the shelters in situation when the battlefield is near, or in situation when the 70% of buildings, civil buildings, are destroyed. And of course, we understand that is possible only in a nuclear war, when we use the weapon of mass destruction. So sad news, but real information, friends. In any case, I wish you only wellness, only hope, only good thoughts, good weekends, of course. And don't forget to subscribe for this channel. Please write down your question behind this video. I'll be lucky and I will be very glad to answer for them. See you, bye-bye, next time.